You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to clarify something you didn't hear properly. If you don't hear what someone says, the easiest thing to do is just let it go. Move on. Let them keep talking. But that can be a very dangerous strategy. I mean, what if they asked you to do something important? Or what if they told you some important information? Do you really want to miss that? So, rather than letting it go, it's easy to just ask the person to repeat what they said. To do that politely, we might say, "Could you repeat that, please?" Or you can use the expression, "I beg your pardon." Then the person knows you haven't heard them, and they'll repeat it for you. Why don't we try some of these expressions for clarifying what you heard? Listen to each example, then repeat it for yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
I beg your pardon?
You might notice that we often say, "We're sorry." No, you didn't do something wrong. This is just a way of introducing a request for clarification. And that might include simply saying you didn't understand or catch what the person said. Of course, in regular conversation, we don't always have to use these longer, polite expressions. I mean, if you're talking with a close colleague or friend, you might use shorter expressions, such as, "Excuse me? What's that?" or "Come again?" Let's give these more informal expressions a try. Remember to repeat the examples after you hear them.
What's that?
Come again?
I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
Once again, we practiced saying we're sorry. But this time, we said we're sorry, but made it sound like a question. If you didn't hear someone and you just say, "I'm sorry," they won't think you're asking for repetition. They'll think you did something wrong. But if you say, "I'm sorry," then they will understand you didn't hear them. These expressions are great when you really don't know what someone said, but sometimes you think you might have heard correctly, but you're not sure. In this case, you want to confirm what you heard. In other words, you say what you think you heard and ask the person if it's right. For example, I might ask, "You said you can help me tomorrow, right?" Or instead of that question tag, "right," we can use, "Is that correct?" Another way to ask for confirmation is with a direct question like, "Did you say tomorrow?" Let's practice asking for confirmation. Once again, repeat the examples you hear.
Sorry, but did you say 3:30?
You said 12 people, right?
Just to be sure, you want this next week?
Okay, $30 a meter. Is that correct?
Did you notice the statement that sounded like a question? I mean, the question, you want this next week? That's a really simple way to confirm what someone said. Just use question intonation on the end of a statement. All right, we've practiced some useful expressions. Now, let's hear how this sounds in a conversation. Let's listen to a short dialogue between Paul and Laura. Paul is talking about the timing of a delivery, and Laura has trouble hearing. Let's listen.
We will need this by 3 at the latest.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
The delivery needs to be at our office by 3 p.m.
Just to be sure, that's 3 o'clock, right?
Not so hard, right? Laura uses a couple of different ways of clarifying. Now, it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time, we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You will have to say those parts yourself. Remember to say that you didn't quite catch what Paul said. Then, confirm that he meant 3 p.m. Here we go.
We will need this by 3 at the latest. The delivery needs to be at our office by 3 p.m.
All right, that about does it for this lesson. We've learned some great ways to clarify what you've heard. Tune in next time when we'll learn how to clarify when you've heard someone but you don't understand what they've said. Until then, so long and happy learning. You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to learn some ways of clarifying what someone means. Sure, you can just smile and nod when you don't understand. People do that all the time. But they also feel foolish later, especially when the speaker realizes what has happened, or when you have to ask a question that clearly shows you didn't understand the first time. Sometimes it's just one word you don't know the meaning of. In this case, don't be afraid to stop someone and ask for clarification. You can always begin by saying you're sorry. Then, just ask what the word means. Or, you can say you're not quite clear what you mean by a certain word. How about a bit of practice on clarifying an unknown word? Listen to each example, then repeat it yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
Sorry, but what exactly is click-through rate?
You mentioned logistics. What does that mean?
I'm not quite clear what you mean by segment.
I'm sorry, but I don't know what OS means.
As you can see, clarifying a word can be done politely and directly. And if it is just one word, it's really best to ask about that word specifically, rather than saying you don't understand more generally. But it's not always one word that gets in the way of understanding. Sometimes it's an entire idea that's unclear, especially if it's said indirectly. You might think you've understood, but you're not sure. To confirm you've understood in this case, just begin with something like, "Are you saying," or "Am I correct in understanding that?" And then say what you think the idea is. Let's try these expressions for confirming understanding. Remember to repeat the examples after you hear them.
Just to be clear, you don't want to do the presentation?
Am I correct in understanding that you like the new designs?
Are you saying we should not open a new office?
So, you're telling us we need to cut costs, right?
Notice that to confirm you've understood, you can also state the idea using question intonation. That basically says, "Please confirm this idea." Or you can state the idea and add a little question tag like, "Right?" on the end. The problem is, sometimes it's not a single word you need to clarify. Sometimes you just don't understand what a person is talking about. And in this case, you can ask for more explanation. That means questions like, "Could you give me a bit more detail?" Or, "Would you mind explaining that in more detail?" Let's practice asking for more explanation. Once again, repeat the examples you hear.
I'm sorry, but what do you mean exactly?
Could you give me a bit more detail on that?
I just need a bit of clarification on that.
Would you mind explaining that in a bit more detail?
As you heard, if you need clarification, you can just tell someone directly, or you can ask politely for more detail or explanation. All right, we've practiced some useful expressions on their own. Now, let's hear what they sound like in a conversation. Let's listen to a short dialogue between Anne and James. They're talking about building a new website, and James doesn't understand exactly what Anne is trying to say. Let's listen.
It's crazy to think about a new website design.
Are you saying we should not build a new site?
Yes, it's a ridiculous way to improve our position.
I'm sorry, but what do you mean exactly?
Pretty simple, right? James is trying to confirm his understanding and to get more explanation. Now, it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You will have to say those parts yourself. Remember to confirm that Anne is saying you should not build a new site. And then ask exactly what she means.
It's crazy to think about a new website design. Yes, it's a ridiculous way to improve our position.
All right, that about does it for this lesson. We've learned some great ways of clarifying understanding. We'll be back soon with another 9 to 5 English lesson. Until then, so long and happy learning. You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to ask for and give directions. It would be great if the map apps on our phones were perfect, but even with the help of technology, we can get confused in a new city, a new neighborhood, or a new office building. And when we do, we need to be able to ask for help. One simple way to ask for directions is to ask if someone knows where something is. Or you can just say that you're looking for a certain place, whether it's a building or a room inside a building. One other polite way to ask for directions is with the expression, "Could you tell me how to get to a place?" Why don't we try some of these expressions for asking for directions? Listen to each example, then repeat it for yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
Could you tell me how to get to the library?
Do you know where the Omega Hotel is?
Sorry, I'm looking for the meeting room.
What's the best way to get to the nearest subway station?
As you heard, sometimes you don't know exactly where you're going, but you need a certain kind of place, like a subway station. In that case, we often ask for the nearest one. Now, there are actually two kinds of questions here. If you ask someone the best way to get somewhere, you're looking for directions. If you ask, "Where is a place?" you're asking for location. You need to be able to answer both kinds of questions. Giving directions is pretty simple. You can just tell the person where to go using expressions like go straight, turn right, or turn left. Then you mention the street the person is to go straight on or where they should turn. Let's give these expressions a try. Remember to repeat the examples after you hear them.
Just head straight down Burnett Avenue for about 200 meters.
Turn right when you come to the Royal Bank.
Take a left on West Side Road.
You'll have to go up a floor and then down the hall.
You might have noticed a couple of other verbs that we use to give directions. First, you might tell someone to head in a certain direction. In this situation, head just means go. The other verb we use instead of turn left or right is take a left or right. All right. That's directions. What about location? How can you tell someone exactly where something is? Well, in that case, you need some location words like across from, to the left of, at the corner, and between. We use these expressions to describe where something is in relation to something else. Let's practice these expressions, and you'll see what I mean about describing location. Once again, repeat the examples you hear.
It's right across from the Nike store.
It's just to the left of the cafeteria.
It's at the corner of 5th and Kingsway.
It's between Sprout Cafe and the Korean restaurant.
Can you see how that works? Now, one thing that can be confusing is when we say right across from. That doesn't mean right, as in turn right or left. It means directly across from something. Not a little to one side, but directly across from. Okay, we've practiced some useful expressions. Now, let's hear how this sounds in a conversation. Let's listen to a short dialogue between Tim and Zara. Tim is asking for directions to a place called the Cascade Building. Let's listen.
Could you tell me how to get to the Cascade Building?
Sure. Just head straight down Ellis Street for 100 meters.
Thanks. And is it on the left or the right of the street?
It's on the left, right across from the subway station.
Pretty simple, right? Zara uses one expression for giving directions and another for describing the location of the building. Now it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You will have to say those parts yourself. Remember to tell Tim to head straight down Ellis Street for 100 meters. Then tell him that the building is right across from the subway station.
Could you tell me how to get to the Cascade Building? Thanks. And is it on the left or the right of the street?
All right, that about does it for this lesson. We've learned some great ways to ask for and give directions. Until next time, so long and happy learning.